back to News Talk. Another sign that House Speaker John Boehner is having trouble keeping command of the Republican caucus. A GOP lawmaker from North Carolina, Congressman Mark Meadows, moving to strip Boehner of his position. Meadows is not likely to succeed, but it is a startling development nonetheless. Benton Ives is Congressional editor for Politico, and it's great to have you back. Thanks very much for being here.
My pleasure.
What's going on? What tool is this? I referred to him earlier as a backbencher. How is Mark Meadows going after John Boehner?
He's using a very unusual parliamentary mechanism. It's a motion to vacate the chair. It hasn't been used, I think, in almost 100 years, so it's very unusual. Effectively, it asks the House to vote on whether or not they want to remove the Speaker from his position. He likely does not have the support to succeed. I expect that Boehner will be able to beat back the challenge one way or the other. Notably, Meadows did it in such a fashion that it's not as confrontational as it could have been, but it's still a pretty big shot across Boehner's bow.
How this gets handled procedurally, where it gets referred to a committee that has, I read in Politico, a bunch of Boehner loyalists on it, puts this at pretty close to a zero chance of success, begging the question, why do it?
Well, you know, in politics, there's always the question of symbology, right? You know, it's not just what you can do, it's how you do it and what people perceive that you're doing. In this case, yes, Meadows stopped short of really forcing the issue on the floor. Instead, his resolution has been referred to the Rules Committee, where it will likely die. On the other hand, you know, we all wrote about it. Everybody knows about it. So now there's this guy really publicly challenging Boehner, whereas most of the challenges to Boehner have been more kept within the Republican family, if you will. So it's now out in the open. There is the issue, though, that I think Meadows was kind of out on his own on this. I don't know that he really has a ton of support from some of his other sort of rock-rib conservative compatriots.
What is the source of the angst? Whatever the number of hardcore Boehner foes, if you will, on the GOP side, what's the crux of it?
You know, I think it stretches back probably to 2008 and to when a lot of these members were elected by a very angry electorate, you know, who were upset with what was happening with the recession and with government spending. And they feel that Boehner has cut too many deals. He has not held true enough to Republican principles of small government, reduced spending, and cutting the debt. There have been some specifics along the way, some more nuanced issues over things like Ex-Im Bank, but I think it flows out of that sort of core objection to big government and the fact that Boehner hasn't really carried that torch the way that they would have liked him to.
How likely are we to see the House and Senate restore funding to the highway fund? I mean, the deadline is practically upon us. They don't need to do it by the deadline, but for people who think that keeping up with your infrastructure is a good idea, the sooner this happens, the better.
Yeah, I think the likelihood that they'll find some sort of stopgap, probably a 3-month bill, is what we're looking at right now. They don't want to shut down construction in the middle of August, middle of travel season, and it just doesn't look good for anybody to have the word shutdown associated with your leadership. So they'll do some sort of short-term measure, and they keep trying to work towards a longer-term 3 to 6 year bill. I don't expect a big problem here, although I didn't expect Mark Meadows to try to unseat Speaker Boehner yesterday, so you never know.
With a couple seconds left, identifying funding among the issues that lawmakers are grappling with. Identifying how you know, whether it's borrowing or tapping other funds.
Right. So you have the question of how do you pay for the highway bill. It's quite expensive. These are billion-dollar projects, multi-billion-dollar projects. Frankly, the Senate long-term bill uses a lot of, for lack of a better term, accounting gimmicks. The House isn't fond of that, and that's one of the reasons we're just going to see a short-term stopgap.
All right. Benton Ives, Congressional editor for Politico. Thanks so much for stopping by. Good having you here today.
Thank you.
We'll step aside. We're back with more News Talk right after this.